Today, we're going to dive into the work of a master playwright, Arthur Miller, and figure out how he basically rewired the whole idea of tragedy for our modern times. It all comes down to this one powerful and, yeah, often pretty heartbreaking concept, the unattainable ideal. So let me just start by asking you something. Have you ever felt that crushing weight? The feeling that you're just not living up to the person you're supposed to be? That no matter how hard you try, the goalposts for success just keep shifting further away. Well, if that sounds even a little familiar, you are definitely not alone. Arthur Miller pretty much built his entire career on exploring that exact feeling. And to really get it, we need to meet one of the most famous characters in all of literature, a traveling salesman by the name of Willy Loman. Okay, so let's break down what made Miller's work so revolutionary. His real genius was in creating a type of tragedy that felt immediate, that felt real, something that could happen to your neighbor, or frankly, something that could happen to you. You gotta remember, before Miller came along, tragedy was usually reserved for the high and mighty, kings, queens, epic warriors. But Miller, in his famous essay Tragedy and the Common Man, basically said, no way. He argued that regular, everyday people are just as capable of greatness in tragedy. The battleground wasn't some ancient kingdom. It was the struggle to just hold on to your dignity in a world that doesn't seem to give a damn. So what is it that drives these ordinary people right to their breaking point? Well, it all boils down to this one core concept, what we can call the unattainable ideal. Okay, this right here, this is the key to everything. The unattainable ideal is that perfect picture of life that a character holds in their head, a version of themselves where they finally have respect, success, or just a true sense of belonging. The real tragedy is that they chase this vision with everything they have, so fiercely that it's the chase itself that ends up destroying them. To really get a handle on this, let's look at three of Miller's most powerful characters. And what's wild is that each one is a dreamer, and each one is ultimately doomed by the very dream that gives them hope. First up, of course, we have Willy Loman from Death of a Salesman. His unattainable ideal is this really warped version of the American dream. He is absolutely convinced that being popular, being well-liked, is the exact same thing as being successful. And this is where it all falls apart for him. In Willy's head, his ideal is simple. If people like you, success will just happen. But the cold, hard reality of his world is brutal. Society doesn't care if he's a nice guy, it cares about his sales numbers. And that huge, unbridgeable gap between his dream and the facts, that's what completely unravels him. Now let's see how Miller takes this same idea and twists it. Our next dreamer, John Proctor from the Crucible, he's not chasing money or fame. His unattainable ideal is something way deeper, his own moral integrity, his good name. And this one line just illustrates his entire struggle perfectly. See, after he has an affair, he is desperate to feel like a good man again, to get back his self-respect. So when the Salem witch trials force him into an impossible choice, lie and save your life or tell the truth and die, he roars this line. For Proctor, his name, his identity is the only real thing he has left. So again, we've got this intense clash. Proctor's ideal is to be an honest man, but he's stuck in a society that's gone completely mad with hysteria, where the only way to live is to confess to a lie. Now, unlike Willy, you could say Proctor achieves a kind of tragic victory. He chooses his ideal over his own life, and in that moment, he reclaims his soul. All right, our final case study is a guy named Eddie Carbone from A View from the Bridge. Eddie's ideal is all about being the respected, unquestioned head of his family. He has this deep need to be in control, to know he belongs and that he's honored by his own people. But here's the tragic twist. His whole ideal of family loyalty gets completely demolished by a reality he just can't bring himself to face, his own hidden jealous feelings for his niece. And because he refuses to understand himself, he ends up betraying the very family code he claims to live by, which leads him straight to his own ruin. When you lay it all out like this, it becomes so clear. Each of these guys has a classic tragic flaw, right? But what's fascinating is how it's tied directly to the thing they value most. Willy's self-deception, it comes from his desperate need to believe in his American dream. Proctor's pride, it's all about his name, his honor. And Eddie's jealousy, it's born from his need for control and belonging. In every case, their greatest strength becomes their fatal weakness. But wait a minute, these characters aren't just acting in a vacuum. If their own ideals are part of their downfall, what exactly are they pushing against? Well, in Arthur Miller's world, the real villain is often not a person at all. And this is a massive, massive shift from classical tragedy. Miller is basically putting society on trial. His characters aren't just fighting their own inner demons, they are fighting against the invisible, crushing forces of the world they happen to live in. And you can see these forces so clearly in each play. For Willy Loman, it's the cold, unforgiving machinery of capitalism that chews you up and spits you out. For John Proctor, it's the irrational terror of mass hysteria. And for Eddie Carbone, it's the rigid, unwritten social codes of his community. Miller's heroes are products of their environment, and that environment is actively hostile to their dreams. Okay, so these plays are decades old. Why do we still talk about them? Why do they still hit so hard today? It's because these struggles are absolutely timeless. I mean, we all grapple with pressure from our careers, with figuring out our own identity, with the weight of what society tells us we're supposed to be. Willy Loman's anxiety about success feels like it could have been written yesterday for a LinkedIn post, and Miller just nails that profound question. What happens when the dreams we're all taught to chase are simply impossible to catch? And this all leads us to Miller's greatest innovation, what you could call a dignity-driven tragedy. His heroes don't fall because they're weak. It's the opposite. They fall because they are strong. They fall because they refuse, right up to the very end, to let go of their vision of who they're meant to be. And that leaves us with a question that echoes through every single one of his great tragedies. A question he's not just asking his characters, but he's asking all of us. In the fight for your own sense of dignity, for your own ideal, what is worth sacrificing for?